KSI vs Tommy Fury is happening this Saturday, with KSI trying to prove that he can hang with legit pro boxers, whereas Tommy's just doing what he does, going out there and beating guys who he sees as inferior to him. And it seems that most people think Tommy will win this fight, and he should. He has the experience advantage, the size advantage, the skill advantage. He comes from a family of boxers. His brother Tyson is the heavyweight champion of the world. His dad John was a boxer. His uncle Huey was a boxer. So Tommy should definitely win this fight, but will he? Does KSI have a chance against Tommy? Can he beat Tommy? How will he beat Tommy? Now, it is going to be really hard for KSI to win a decision against Tommy. To win a decision against a guy like Tommy, you have to outbox them. And KSI is not a high enough level boxer to outbox Tommy Fury. It's just not going to happen. So he has to go out there and fight Tommy. He has to make it dirty. He has to make it unorthodox and give Tommy a different look than he's used to seeing. As I just said, KSI probably has to knock Tommy out. I give him less than a 5% chance of winning a decision, but he has to do it technically and he has to do it smartly. He can't just go out there, stand in the center, and wing overhands. That won't work. Tommy will catch him and Tommy could knock him out. He has to technically find the knockout. He can't overexpose himself on wild looping punches that he throws from the hips, which he normally does. That's normally his style. He keeps his hands low and wings, hooks, and overhands from his hips. But in this fight, he's going up against a guy who is by far and away the best boxer he has ever faced. He can get away with that against the other bums he's fought. But against Tommy, who's a legit pro boxer, he has to be smarter and more defensively sound, and he knows that. Now, knocking Tommy out is a tough task, especially since he's never been knocked out. He's never even lost a fight. KSI's best chance to knock Tommy out is with that right hand. Tommy's been caught by that right hand multiple times before in his past fights, and I think that's what KSI sees when he accepted this fight. I think KSI saw how Tommy defensively isn't great and how he's been caught with that overhand right many times before. Now, in order for KSI to catch Tommy, he's gonna have to set it up, whether that's offensively setting it up behind his jab or masking that right hand with a left hook or going to the body and then coming upstairs. He can't just throw naked overhands. Tommy's gonna see them, avoid them, and counter. Or he's going to have to transition defense to offense, which is where I see him having the most success and having the best chance of landing that overhand right. Now, Tommy's best punch offensively is his jab. He knows how to use it well. He's got freakishly long arms. I think he's got an 80-inch reach or something crazy. He's fast with his jab, and more importantly, he's super accurate with it. However, defensively, he does leave holes. He often overextends on that jab and then keeps his chin up in the air. This is where KSI is going to be able to catch him, because as Tommy extends with his jab, if KSI can backstep, avoid the jab, or just slip to the inside, step forward, and then throw that overhand right, he can throw it over Tommy's jab and land on the temple. That's how Jake Paul was able to land his right hand a couple of times, and Tommy's also been caught a couple times. I think against Jordan Grant, he was caught with that same exact punch. Tommy's defensive fundamentals are far behind his actual talent level as a boxer. He leaves his chin up in the air far too often, and then on the retraction of his punches, he drops them to his hips. Now, that's a very common mistake to make, but for a guy who's been boxing for 10 to 15 years, that's something he should have learned by now. He's got decent head movement, nothing amazing, but it's good enough for the level he's at right now. His footwork is fundamentally sound, nothing crazy. Offensively, we said he has a really good jab. He's got a pretty good right hand, a lot of power in that right hand. A lot of people don't know Tommy does have legit power. Luckily for Tommy, KSI has much worse defense than him, and much worse defense than a lot of the guys Tommy has fought. Like Jake Paul has much better defense than KSI. KSI keeps his hands low at his hips, his chin straight up in the air. A lot of the time he keeps his chin super far forward as well, which is going to help that jab from Tommy land over and over again. As well, on the retraction of KSI's punches, he, just like Tommy, especially on his jab, throws his jab out and then drops his lead hand straight to his hips. which leaves the opening for Tommy to throw that right hand straight down the center line, and KSI doesn't have good enough reaction time to avoid that right hand, and the speed Tommy has is going to give KSI a massive problem in this fight. We also know KSI always likes to overextend on his punches and overcommit. Those winging overhands he throws leaves his chin wide open and keeps his chin straight up in the air, doesn't keep his chin behind his shoulder, which is going to give Tommy more room to counter him with an uppercut or a right hook or a right overhand himself. Now, one of KSI's biggest strengths is his footwork. His footwork is actually very good for the level of fighter he is. His footwork is very awkward and unorthodox, but he can switch at angles pretty well. He can actually switch stances between southpaw and orthodox. Now, he is a lot better out of orthodox, and he should fight most of this fight in orthodox so he can slip to the inside of Tommy's jab and then throw that right hand over the top. But being able to switch stances into southpaw does give KSI a different look and different angles he can attack Tommy on. Tommy spends most of his fights on the back foot. Despite being the better boxer in every single one of his fights, he's constantly on the back foot, moving backwards and circling away, whereas KSI spends the majority of his fights on the front foot, being the aggressor and just throwing a bunch of stuff at you, hoping something lands. Now, in this fight, he's gonna have to mask his forward movement behind his jab. He hasn't shown a great jab. Actually, in his last fight against whoever that one guy's name was, I forget his name, but he did show an improved jab. He did land his jab pretty well. Now, the guy he fought had very slow reaction time, and Tommy's going to be able to avoid that jab a lot easier, but it's been one of his weaknesses offensively. We know he has a good right hand with a lot of power in it. He has a decent left hook, and that's about it. His jab isn't great. His cross isn't great. His right hook's okay. It's got a lot of power, but he often overextends on it. He can't overextend in this fight. I can't make that clear enough. If he overextends, Tommy's going to catch him. Now, we don't know how Tommy is going to deal with KSI's unorthodox style. Pretty much everyone Tommy has fought has been a traditional boxer. KSI, on the other hand, is pretty much as untraditional as he gets. He throws crazy punches from different angles. He'll throw like shovel hooks to the head. He'll throw crazy left hooks at awkward angles. His footwork in and of itself is going to be hard for Tommy to figure out because it's just not something you see. He often fights like a karate fighter where he'll have more bounce in his footwork and then switch off at different angles. And this unorthodox style is not necessarily a good thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It has advantages and disadvantages, and let me explain. So as I said before, KSI is not going to be able to beat Tommy in a technical boxing match. He's years, maybe even a decade behind Tommy in that regard, and he knows that. So what is he going to do? He's going to go out there and he's going to fight Tommy. He's not going to box him. He has said this himself. He's not going to go out there and try and outbox Tommy. He's going to go out there and try and fight Tommy. Now, this is a bad thing because it will make it easier for Tommy to hit him because he leaves so many openings and opportunities for Tommy to slip, counter with a right hand, backstep right hand, or just jab and move away. But it's also a good thing because Tommy's not used to defending punches like this, which will make them harder to defend. I actually think this unorthodox style gives him a better chance because this style makes it harder for Tommy to avoid his punches and easier for KSI to hit him. I think that increases KSI's chances of knocking Tommy out. However, can he knock Tommy out? I don't think so. Now, I know KSI has said that he hits unlike anyone Tommy has ever fought. He hits harder than Jake Paul, and I don't think KSI does hit harder than Jake. First of all, KSI is probably, 185? Jake Paul's like 205. Jake Paul has 20 pounds on him at least. As well, KSI's only knocked one person out, and that was, no offense to FaZe Temper, but FaZe Temper. Jake Paul, on the other hand, has knocked out two people. He knocked out Nate Robinson, which, let's be honest, not that impressive. But then he knocked out Tyron Woodley, which I know Tyron isn't a boxer, but he was a champion in the UFC just a few years before, and he had legit boxing power and okay boxing fundamentals. To be honest, Tyron Woodley beats everyone on KSI's resume and probably beats KSI, but that's a little closer. So not only has Jake Paul knocked out more people and knocked out more impressive people, he's also bigger, and if Jake Paul was able to land that punch on Tommy, and he landed it pretty flush, and Tommy was able able to take it, he never got hurt, then I don't think KSI will be able to hurt Tommy with that same punch. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe KSI does have more power than Jake, or maybe just lands it differently and he does knock Tommy out. So how do I see this fight going? I think Tommy is going to spend most of this fight on the back foot, constantly using his jab and circling away from the ropes. KSI, as we said before, doesn't have great defense. He leaves his head open. He leaves his hands low and wide, his chin forward and up in the air, which is perfect for Tommy's jab. And Tommy has a very fast jab that KSI is not going to be able to use head movement to avoid. Now, as Tommy throws that jab, can KSI catch him as he overextends? I think he can. I think KSI will hit Tommy over that jab. I think most likely he'll try and mask it behind his own jab and then throw that right hand as Tommy tries to counter. Or he'll slip to the inside and then throw that right hand over Tommy's jab and land it. He could also land his left hook. He's got a pretty good left hook as Tommy dips down to throw that jab and drops his right hand. Tommy has dropped his right hand before. That's where KSI is going to have to capitalize on that opening and throw that left hook to the head. But I think Tommy is going to be able to take the punches, and then as KSI comes into range, he'll clinch, which he'll dominate in the clinch because of the size disadvantage. And then in that medium boxing range where KSI likes to be and where he wants to be, I think Tommy will throw combinations. He's got decent combinations. He'll probably lean behind his jab, throw that right hand, and then the left hook behind it. That's one of his favorite combinations. And as KSI overextends on his overhands, Tommy could step back and then wing that right hand and catch KSI off balance. That's where he'll drop KSI most likely if he does drop him, and that's where he has the best chance of knocking KSI out. But in the end, I think Tommy sits on the outside, uses his jab to keep KSI at bay, and then when KSI gets in, I think he throws that right hand and then clinches. But when he gets into range, can KSI land that left hook? Or at distance, can KSI step in and then throw that right hand over the top and knock Tommy out? I guess we'll see, but who do I see winning this? KSI does have a chance. Tommy leaves opening specifically to that right hand over the jab and then that left hook on Tommy's overextension, and those are coincidentally two of KSI's best punches. But I see Tommy winning a decision. I think he'll be defensively sound enough to avoid KSI's right hand. There is a decent chance KSI could drop him, but Tommy has shown to have a pretty good chin, so I don't see KSI knocking him out. And if he doesn't knock Tommy out, it's very hard for him to win a decision, especially with all the openings he's going to leave. That jab is going to land all day. That right hand over KSI's left hook is going to be there. And that's where Tommy probably has the best chance of knocking KSI out, is with that right straight to counter one of KSI's overextended punches. Overall, it's a very tough fight for KSI to win, and mad respect for him taking it. And if he does win, that'll make it even more impressive. But anyways, that is my final prediction. I'm gonna go with Tommy winning a 5-1 decision over KSI. Leave your prediction in the comments down below. Subscribe if you are new and you did enjoy. If you want to, you don't have to subscribe. Like the video, follow my brand on Instagram, follow myself on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stuck in a bad dream, Hollywood rich girl stuck in my backseat, and she wanna get at me, but the day's too short, can't let her distract me.